35 years ago, all I could think about was Santa Barbara and Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now all I can think about is Santa Barbara and Crisis on Infinite Earths. This has led me to form a pan-dimensional fan club. Using the technology devised during the original Crisis, I've been in contact with Sally Taylor on the Earth in which Santa Barbara takes place.
I know you didn't do anything wrong, Joe.
You don't want a girl? Not Kelly Capwell. Oh, that's true love.
I admire your guts, and the future's all that counts.
We have formed the Kelly plus Joe Forever Fan Club. Stay tuned every day for more fan club news.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We have watched episode 66 of Santa Barbara, and that originally aired October 29th, 1984. Gina comes back to her hotel room only to find that Santana's still there with Brandon. Gina invites them to Santana to dinner. They have room service. And Brandon gets put to bed, and Santana asks about Gina and Stockman, and she talks about Brandon, and then she mentions that Brandon's adopted, and that she was a temporary secretary when she met Stockman, and that Cece set up the adoption for them.
Yes.
Which is all stuff that Santana knows anyway.
Yes.
And then Gina asks about Santana, and she says she's an interior designer, and says someday she'd like a boy like Brandon. So, we'll see if that ever happens.
Well, it seems to be from Gina's side kind of a chance to unwind and confide in someone who I guess is fairly close to her own age, whereas Santana, you can see, is sort of seething underneath the surface because she knows this is her son, and she knows the circumstances that he was taken away from her in. And I think she's finding it really stressful because she just wants to be with the boy, and she's sort of sitting there having to play nice with his mom. So, so there's kind of two levels of conversation going on here.
Yep, she goes on the pretext of going to freshen up. She goes into Brandon's bedroom and starts, saying motherly things to him. And
yes,
Gina walks in
right.
and she says, "Oh, I heard him having a nightmare."
Yeah,
and
she covers pretty well.
Gina says,
actually.
"Oh, you have a motherly instinct."
Yeah.
Joe tells Dominic that Peter used to work as a male prostitute for Ginger.
Yeah.
So this is horrifying to Dominic that Peter is going to marry Kelly. Dominic can't quite remember the address on Hollister where Kelly went the one day that they figure out she's gone to see Ginger. So Joe says they should just drive down Hollister and see if Dominic can remember the house.
Yeah.
And Dominic says, well, if you go out there in broad daylight, that you're going to be arrested. So Joe says, yes, but you can give me a disguise. So while Dominic is going to get her disguise kit, Joe goes to the Perkins house and tells Amy, hey, Cruz set up a false identity for you to take a job as Amy Prescott working for Peter Flint while the secretary Veronica's on vacation. So that all happened off screen.
Yeah.
Then he runs back to get his disguise put on by Dominic. So now Joe is an old man.
Yeah, so Dominic is quite obviously a middle-aged woman with a beard. She's not even trying to wear a hat and sunglasses anymore. So it's full light, so it's pretty obvious. Joe is basically made up to look like Buddy Ebsen in the Beverly Hillbillies.
Joe says, wow, you're really good at this.
Yeah.
You should do this for a living.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a disconnect between reality and
Yeah.
fantasy with respect to the disguises. I think it's kind of interesting that this is the week of Halloween, October 29th.
Yes, and we do
We've
have
got
a little bit of a Halloween
Joe and Dominic
story.
running around town in disguises.
Yeah.
And we have another Halloween story coming up in a second. So anyway, they end up... Dominic sees the house that she thinks is the right one. Joe goes up there, pretends to be an old man looking for someone who used to live there, and recognizes Rip through the door.
Yeah.
So he goes back and says, yeah, that's the house. Now, Brick tells Amy that Minx wants to see her again. Well, Amy says, I just took this temp job at the Capwells for a few days. Brick gets kind of angry over this. He's worried that Amy will lose her chance to have the job, and that also it'll reflect badly on him. So
Yeah.
Amy goes to Peter's office and tells him she's his fill-in secretary and listens into his calls. So
Yeah.
that seems to work successfully. Brick shows up later to apologize and had asked for Amy Perkins when he showed up. Eventually, they said, oh, there's a new Amy who started.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, yeah, I didn't tell them my name was Perkins because I figured the Capwells wouldn't want to hire Joe Perkins' sister. So
Yeah.
he buys that.
And he also says that, she could probably come by at any time. And, there's still the possibility, I guess, of the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said, oh, just
Yeah.
come by after work then, which is what she originally
Yeah,
said
I
she
thought
could
that
do
was
anyway,
a
so.
reasonable thing. And I think her, we know all this stuff that's going on, but in the real world, her looking for temp work while she's trying to find something permanent would not be unreasonable at all.
Especially if it's only going to be a few days. So.
Yeah. I actually thought one little thing he said was interesting, where he said that he really didn't want to ruin his chances, that he had kind of a whiff of something a little bit more for him with the Lockridges. And that's something we were talking about yesterday, that we thought that, Minx was actually setting him up for a larger role. Mm-hmm. And I think he's got a little bit of a sense of that too. Whereas Augusta, as we know from yesterday, is still completely oblivious.
Yes. Jade and Danny hear the haunting noise at the motel / clubhouse. And then the typewriter starts typing by itself, and it types the word beware.
Yes.
So I guess this is a Halloween story.
I think so. It's October 29th. So I would assume this would be a fairly short story.
They run out Scooby-Doo style, and then we hear evil laughter echoing through the building. So Danny tries to ask Jade out to dinner, and she says that she's not interested in him at all. So then a prostitute who used to work at that motel comes in, and just to say hi. Danny decides to ask her out and to make Jade jealous, and she agrees. Danny not aware of her actual former position at the motel. Mm-hmm. Jade notices it immediately and tells him, and he says, oh, you're just jealous.
Yeah.
And then Jade calls after him, you'll be sorry.
Yeah.
Or maybe you won't.
Well, I was actually surprised that they were still at the hotel after the self-typing typewriter and the evil laughter. I thought they would be running out of there and never coming back. But
work their way back in, I guess.
Yeah, they're still cleaning it. And, the prostitute seemed like kind of a random thing. At first I thought, well, maybe she's a ghost or something. But no, she seems to be quite real. So, we'll see what happens with that.
Mm-hmm. Someone named Charles, that I don't know if we've seen before, brings two briefcases to Cece filled with $1 million in cash. And then Rip calls Cece and says, get that Peter Flint guy, whatever his name is, to take the money in a car that has a phone.
Yeah.
And then Cece gives him the phone number. Mason has the car wired for sound so that they can listen in on any calls made, which is useful. I think he's thinking it's Peter, and this would be perfect if he and Ginger say something.
Yeah.
then Cece's worried that all the precautions, like the other tracking things they talk about, are going to endanger Kelly. So Cece and Mason argue about that. And then Dominic calls with Ginger's address. Mason takes the call. So everyone rushes out except Peter to go to that address. And Mason says, I'll call the police while we're on the way. Or call the headquarters. So Peter's pacing around a little. Then he notices the 2 briefcases full of money. And as he's approaching him, the door opens and Mason comes back in saying, I think I'd better take these.
Yeah, yeah.
You never know when you might need $1 million. So that was hilarious. Peter calls Ginger to warn her the police are on their way.
Yeah.
The police officer, one of them goes up and gets Ginger to come out of the house by pretending that his dog's gotten lost and her side gate is open. And when she steps out to check, he grabs her, and then Cece and Mason and the other police officer rush in. They search the place, but there's no one else there, just Ginger. And then Ginger says, oh, what, you Cece Capwell? I'm your daughter's dressmaker. So clearly the warning was enough to make the house look like just a normal house. So there's really no evidence against her yet, as far as I can tell.
But the last scene...
Rip and Bobby are in their car,
Yeah.
with Kelly asleep in the back seat, and they're parked near a payphone, and they're waiting for Ginger to call. And one of them says, if Ginger doesn't call, we deep six the blonde and make tracks for the border.
Yeah. So there were a couple things that I wondered about in this little bit. First of all, I was surprised that Mason and Cece both took off in the car and left Peter alone. And I am hoping that Mason does have that ulterior plan that you were mentioning, that he's got the phones bugged and this is maybe a trap for Peter. Because otherwise it just seems terribly inconsistent and incompetent. Cece is just being basically ready to throw Peter under the bus. Mason doesn't trust him, so why would you leave him alone to answer the phone?
Well, yesterday Mason had a tap put on all the phones in the house.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that's really what's going on.
It was kind of dumb of Peter to make an outgoing call.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I think Mason specifically said incoming calls. So maybe Peter's okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll see.
And also, I think this does make me wonder a little bit, especially when we see the ultra competency of Cruz, who's, managed to cook up this alias for Amy within a couple hours and get everything arranged. And, here we have Mason again with the entire police department at his disposal. I don't know why he wouldn't phone people to be dispatched immediately to the house, why he would need to come along on that. Because I'm sure if he has at his disposal the entire Santa Barbara police force, there would probably have been a patrol car a lot nearer than the Capwell Manor.
And they would have not given Ginger enough time to clean up the house.
Exactly.
Make everything look like a normal house.
Yeah, so I did wonder about that. And I also wondered about Peter's motive for calling Ginger. It seems to me that, well, I mean, first of all, if the phones are tapped, that does implicate him. But also I wondered why he would do that.
I think, because he's been concerned that Ginger could hurt Kelly. So you'd think getting her out of Kelly out of her clutches sooner rather than later would be better.
Also, I mean, thinking of it in other ways too, if Mason and Cece are running off to save Ginger, or save Kelly, and Ginger's preoccupied with this whole kidnapping, wouldn't this be the perfect opportunity for Peter to slip out of town and catch that plane and get away from everyone? Get away from his debt with Mason, get away from Ginger, who's about to be arrested, so he doesn't have to deal with her ever.
He was only planning
Kelly's-
to do that yesterday when he thought Kelly was safe.
Yeah,
So.
Kelly would be safe, assuming that they get there and rescue her.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me, if he had just left things and continued on with his plans of leaving, he would be free and clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is an odd thing that he did. I'm not quite sure what his motivation there was.
Yeah.
Unless he's somehow thinking Ginger might still pay him half the money.
That's what I'm thinking, that's, his greed is maybe playing a role in it. And the way he was eyeing those 2 suitcases of money made me think that might have played a role in his making the phone call, that kind of reminded him of the amount of money at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And him still thinking that he might be able to get a share of that.
Mm-hmm. It must be
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, those were the things that stood out to me.
So you didn't earn your $5
No, I guess I didn't.
because
Veronica's not coming back?
the role of Dominic is now being played by Judith McConnell.
Oh.
So Rosemary Forsyth has left the role of Dominic.
Oh,
Last time we
that
saw
was
her Friday
so
on
that
Friday
was kind
show.
of a...
So I think you noticed she looked more like a middle-aged woman.
I did, yeah.
But I think the wig fits a lot differently on Judith McConnell's head and looks very odd right now. So.
Yeah. And honestly, it doesn't, to me, I mean, apart from this big bushy beard, it's the kind of haircut that a lot of older women have, actually.
Yeah, and it looks a little blonde, right?
Yeah.
And it looked very brown on Rosemary Forsyth.
Yeah.
They do have different faces if you look them up online.
Yeah.
The Rosemary Forsyth has a much smaller face.
Yeah, I did notice that. No, I wondered if, and I guess we'll find out, but it did occur to me that Veronica might not come back from that vacation having done all this dirty work for Lionel already.
Well, you now have another guess as to who's the next person to leave. So
I guess I
for
do.
another $5, who are you putting your money on?
Well, I guess I'll put it on Veronica. Yeah, because I thought maybe Summer, that was mainly due to you not remembering anything about her in that photo. But she does seem to be wrapped up in the whole Warren thing still. She is sticking around a little longer than I had expected. So I'm going to guess Veronica next.
All right, we will see. When I guess there'll be a time. If she's not coming back, then there'll be a time when we'll know that for sure.
Yeah.
In some way. I guess I'll find before the next person leaves. I will mention it. All right, so that's good. We'll keep our eyes open for the next departed cast member, and we're still full steam ahead with the kidnapping storyline this week, and a couple of Halloween-like things happening with Joe and Dominic running around town in similarly unrealistic disguises.
And the kids in an apparently haunted hotel.
Mm-hmm. We didn't see Ted and Lincoln today. So.
No. I guess Ted's upstairs or something.
Mm-hmm.
Ted and Eden are waiting it out upstairs.
He didn't rush off into the car with Mason and Cece to go get Ginger. So it's probably the best for him. All right. Well, we'll see you after we watch episode 67 of Santa Barbara.
Today's fan club news. Sally Taylor from Earth SB has indicated that the warden of San Quentin is just as big a fan of Joe and Kelly as we are.
This guy's different. There's something about him. Hey, Perkins. Hey there, Joe Perkins. The parole board moved up its decision on you. You're out, Joe. You're free to go. You're released from prison. You're out, Joe. You're free. It's all over.
He'll be joining the Kelly plus Joe Forever fan club. Also, we finalized the design of the official fan club tattoo, which all members will be required to get. The main feature of the chest tattoo will be the faces of Joe Perkins and Kelly Capwell with the phrase, Joe plus Kelly across the top. Across the arms will be written, "The best of romances deserve second chances." And across the back, we'll have, "If ever you're in my arms again."
Welcome back.
Hello.
As we continue week 14 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara, we watched episode 67, originally aired October 30th, 1984. Happy 16th birthday.
Thank you.
After Danny and Crystal's date, he starts to take off her dress. And she says that'll cost him $80. He only has $5, so she leaves.
She gives him a big kiss.
That's true. She gives him a $5 kiss.
Yeah.
Says when he gets $80 to call her. So Jade, of course, is watching and laughing. Then they hear thunder and lightning because there's a storm coming. And then the typewriter types him another note. Be gone or be eaten. And you pointed out while we were watching that the typewriter now has another sheet of paper in it. So
Yes.
either Jade and Danny put the paper back in there just in case the typewriter had more to say, or the ghost put the paper in the typewriter while they were gone.
No.
So then, just like last time, they switch to business mode and start doing the books instead of leaving the haunted motel. And Danny says business is down. Jade thinks it's the storm.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
But she also feels it would be best to have a seance to get rid of the negative manifestations. So they go out and get some seance supplies. And Ted, of course, doesn't want to come for a seance while Kelly's missing. So he and Lakin don't show up. So it's just Jade and Danny forming a very small circle. They start the seance and read incantations from a book. And the table starts to move and the wind blows. And then the Ghostbusters theme starts, so you know something's happening. And then some sort of apparition appears. It didn't really look like a ghost to me. It looked like more of a portal to something.
Yeah, it's sort of a glowing circular shape.
So it's a portal to the netherworld, perhaps. So that's unexpected. You don't really expect supernatural on a serious show like this.
And they decide that they don't want to continue reading the incantation. There's something there
That's right.
that they think would be a huge mistake to read. So we don't know what that is, but they just close up the book, decide to end it, and basically run away. I think, don't they?
I think they look at this portal for a while.
Okay.
So I think maybe something will come out of it.
Yeah, maybe.
Amy arrives for her meeting with Minx, and she and Brick talk briefly, encounter Warren and Summer. Warren invites Summer out to dinner and then to watch the storm roll in. So at La Mesa, she says she loves the Santa Barbara museum scene and won't miss Los Angeles. And then Warren finally confides in her about his secret. He said that he did something awful once to protect someone he loves. And she says, was it a girl? He says, no, it was my father.
Yeah.
So, this ties in with, our theories that what Warren stole was related to Lionel and Sophia. Perhaps he stole things maybe that Channing had, or did he steal them before Channing could get them? I don't know.
I don't know, but it does, this does back up the conversation he briefly had with Lionel a few episodes ago, where he was basically saying that this whole thing, whatever it is, had to do with Lionel.
Now, Ted had said it was Sophia's things that had been stolen. So perhaps there's some clue, like some inscription or something, from Lionel in one of those things.
Maybe.
And Warren stole it before Channing could see it.
That's a possibility.
So that he wouldn't
as well.
get wind of it. Then wherever they went to go and view the storm coming in, they end up getting stuck in the elevator there as the power goes out just after they get in. Now, back on the kidnapping front, Rip and Bobby are waiting for Ginger's call. She had told them to wait 10 minutes, but of course she's been detained by Mason and gang. So Bobby wants to kill Kelly now and head for the border. Rip says they can wait 5 more minutes before killing her. At Ginger's place, she's now telling the collected people there, Cece, Mason, and the 2 police officers, that, oh yeah, that's right, 3 or 4 men burst in wearing masks and kidnapped Kelly. And Cece's obvious question is, why didn't you call the police?
Yeah.
Said, oh, I learned long ago to mind my own business. So, Mason says there's not really anything he can arrest Ginger for.
Yeah.
So they leave, and she kind of taunts Cece with a parting comment, and he doesn't reply to her at all. Then, when she's sure they've gone, she quickly calls the phone booth where Rip and Bobby were waiting, but they've already pulled away to dump Kelly in the ocean.
Yeah.
Luckily, Ginger intercepts them at the waterfront just in time, so she must have been in on where they were gonna take her if things went awry.
Yeah.
So, she says, don't dump her, we're gonna get our $1 million. Eden complains to Cruz that he's unhelpful. So this is just as they're hanging around the house waiting for news, etc.
Yeah.
And he calls to check in with his team to see if anyone's had any luck finding Kelly, but they haven't. So it's interesting that Mason is having more luck on his own than Cruz's CIA. But then again, Dominic's directly called Mason with that info. So.
That's right.
So Dominic and Joe, in their disguises, show up at Amy's place of work. And Amy doesn't recognize them at first. They say, oh, yeah, we've got an appointment with Peter. We've got an appointment with Peter Flint. So anyway, then she realizes it's them. And Joe says that she should just go home. And she does. So then they wait for Peter. Peter shows up, and they knock him down. And Dominic calls him Antonio and says... she knows he worked for Ginger and that he stole the money from the Capwells, and they tried to kill Ginger in Miami before he came to Santa Barbara, then falsified college records so that he could get his job at Lyman. And Peter wants to know how Dominic can know all of this. So anyway, they keep trying to force him to say where Kelly is, and suddenly the phone rings, and it's Mason saying, okay, the drop's back on. We failed with our other plan, so get over here right away. So Mason convinces Dominic and Joe that Peter convinces Dominic and Joe he's got to go, otherwise Kelly will die. So they reluctantly let him go, but say that this is not the last between them. So Mason runs over the things that the phone in the car is bugged, that there's some iridescent dye on the roof, so they can follow. When Peter's out on the road, he gets a call from Rip saying to pull over and switch cars because he knows that the phone's bugged.
Yeah.
And lose any police that might be following. So Peter does so, but he's aware that there's a police helicopter above him. And so he allows the helicopter to continue to trail him. So when they arrived, Ginger tells him where to drive, and when he arrives, she says, bring the money inside. And she had mentioned that he may only get 10%. She's changed her mind about giving him half. So.
Yeah.
So he brings in the money, and then one of the thugs comes down and says, there's a helicopter landing on the roof. So Ginger thinks Peter double-crossed them, and Peter doesn't really say that he didn't, but he says, how about you give me your gun, and I'll make it look good. I'll fire a few shots in the air, and you guys can run and escape. So she actually does give him the gun, because the helicopter lands, but she goes to grab the suitcases with the money. Peter says, leave the money or I'll kill you. So that's how they were left.
And obviously, or it seems anyway, that the theory you were talking about last episode probably didn't happen. It doesn't sound like Mason has been keeping really much of an eye on Peter.
Yeah, because he told him that the car phone is bugged.
Yeah.
Which might have been better not to tell him.
Yeah.
If he really suspected Peter. So.
And it doesn't seem like he's aware of Peter warning Ginger either.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm a little surprised how much they're trusting Peter in all this to kind of carry it out. So I guess in a way they don't have a choice because Ginger specifically asked for him and it wasn't going to go ahead unless he was involved. But still, they did miss a few opportunities to learn a little bit more about Peter's agenda.
Now Dominic calls Mason to find out how it's going with Kelly. Mm-hmm. And Mason says he doesn't have much time, but Peter's gone to get her.
Yeah.
And then Joe's outside this phone booth, and Joe says that without Kelly, he doesn't want to live. Of course, he's still disguised as an old man. So
Yes.
And that's pretty much all that happened in this episode.
That was quite a bit. Yep, that's mainly what happened.
Mm-hmm. So we are, I assume, going to be wrapping up this kidnapping storyline in this episode, unless Kelly's not in that car. Mm-hmm. And when even if Ginger escapes and they go to get Kelly from the car, perhaps she's actually not in there, which means...
We haven't actually seen her in the car.
Yeah.
We've just seen a big sort of sack.
So so either it could end, or it could actually be to be continued, because Kelly may not actually be there.
I'm sure they will wrap up in some way the hotel haunting one. I mean, I'm sure we'll see some sort of something on that, because the next episode is the Halloween episode.
Mm-hmm.
And after Halloween, this sort of story doesn't have a lot of, very
exactly.
long shelf life. So.
Mm-hmm. So it's a Wednesday, I think, next episode. 68. Be a Thursday. Mm-hmm.
So I would think it would be wrapped up the next episode or the one after. I can't see it going on past this week, really, can you?
No, I think that's got to end.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you after we watch episode 68 of Santa Barbara. Bye.
Bye.
On fan club news, the warden from episode 1 has joined our fan club, which is great, because we'd been wanting to get tattoos for the fan club. So he's recommended a prisoner who's really good at giving tattoos. So I'm going to go tonight after this podcast to meet up with the warden and the others and get my tattoos. I'll probably see my new tattoos next episode. So look forward to that.
I don't really know what you're talking about.
Today was the day, everyone. We just came from the prison. I teleported to the Earth on which Santa Barbara takes place. Sally Taylor and I went to San Quentin Prison, where the warden fixed us up with the most amazing tattoo artist in that prison. Dutch something, I forget. Anyway, we got the best of romances, deserve second chances. We got Dane Witherspoon and Robin Wright, full body portraits. Now, remember, on that Earth, they don't know who Dane Witherspoon and Robin Wright are, because they're real characters to them. So, it's Kelly Capwell and Joe Perkins. So, at the top, we got Kelly Capwell plus Joe Perkins. Now, Dutch suggested, hey, instead of a plus, how about a heart? So, we did that. So, we got Kelly Capwell, heart, Joe Perkins. We'll show you how that looks after it's healed a bit. A lot of blood. Also in the back, if ever you're in my arms again, I've got some mock-ups I can show you. And then Dutch suggested, hey, nothing on the knuckles? That's crazy! So, when did Joe and Kelly fall in love? 1979. And how long will their love last? Forever! Joe and Kelly forever. So this is it. This is the official tattoo of the Kelly plus Joe Forever fan club. Anyone who wants to join the club must get this same tattoo. After Sally and the warden left, I did get Dutch to give me a little something extra. I had Dane Witherspoon plus Robin Wright added because, on my Earth, that is who portrayed them. And that's it. That's the news. So if you want to join the club, figure out how to get to that Earth and get the tattoo, and contact me or Sally. And Dane Witherspoon plus Robin Wright forever!
The part of Joe Perkins is now being played by Mark Arnold. What do you see?
Mark Arnold? Where's Dane Witherspoon? I mean, who even is Mark Arnold? Let's just look at his IMDb here. Oh, 132 credits. Blade Runner 2049, Kingsman, The Golden Circle. Okay, but Dane Witherspoon, aha, Distraught Man in Asteroid, the TV movie. So, That doesn't matter. The point is, I do not accept this new Joe Perkins.
Hello, welcome back to Joe and Dominic Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
You're really good at disguises. I can't even tell that you're a woman. Although there is something familiar about your eyes. We've just watched episode 68 of Santa Barbara that aired on October 31st, 1984. Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween.
Warren tells Summer that he might go to jail for helping Lionel 6 years ago. He tells her he set the fire. She says she can understand helping a loved one. Then he thinks he may have put too much of a burden on her. He takes her home, but they decide to go out again.
And it seems to me that Summer is really very understanding of Warren at this point. And, I assume this is sincere. I haven't gotten any sense of Summer having an ulterior motive at all. So, I mean, unless she's really playing him in the audience, she seems to accept his story, and she seems to accept his point of view.
Yeah, I think she's fairly serious. I mean, she's moved there to Santa Barbara. She's cut ties with L.A. She's got her work at the museum. So.
And we don't have any sense at this point that Gina is, got some kind of game going on at this point. Now, who knows? Maybe as she gets more involved with the other characters or whatever. But at this point, she seems to just be off in France with Brandon, and this seems to be Summer pursuing a relationship on her own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty straightforward. Now, would she end up helping Warren cover something up in the future? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And, that'll be interesting to see. And it'll be interesting to see as well what her interactions with Kelly are like in the future. Because she and Kelly have been good friends. But Summer was, I think, a little bit alarmed when Kelly wanted her to sort of cover up for her a little bit in the matter of the coin. And now Summer seems to be very much in Warren's camp. So it'll be interesting if Kelly tries to enlist Summer again, just where Summer's loyalties will lie. And, if she helps Warren with the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Ted is pacing around the Capwell atrium, and he says he thinks their family is cursed. So Jade and Danny, who are at the haunted motel, they escape after being haunted, following their seance.
Yeah.
And then two elderly criminals show up. They have tricked the kids, and thankfully the motel is empty, so they can start looking in the walls for the money that was hidden from some kind of a job, most likely years ago.
Yeah, and they say very gleefully, "Oh, they'll never be back. The hotel's ours now."
So all those pyrotechnics and things that we saw, the moving table, the ghostly apparitions, those were all some kind of special effects, which I think you had thought it might be.
Yeah, well, if you looked at the shot, there was a shadow of a man kind of operating things above. And at the time when I saw it, I wondered if it was just a mistake, if that was just, if we were just seeing a little bit of the crew, or if that was actually an indication that these apparitions were actually humans playing a trick.
Well, the shadow I actually didn't see the first time, but I did see it when they come again later in this episode. And the shadow appears to be of a man just chasing someone with a hatchet, so I think it was just an additional scary apparition. So they... Danny and Jade go to tell Ted and Laken about the ghost, and Ted and Laken decide they need to see for themselves. So they come to the motel, and then Ted is scoffing,
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, there's no ghosts here. How come they're not showing up?" And we're not sure whether he's gonna end up leaving without realizing that the ghostly apparition. But suddenly the table starts moving and the lights start flashing, the doors start slamming, and then that's when I saw the shadow of a guy kind of with a hatchet. So now they all think the place is haunted.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty fair guess that they will let their lease expire.
I don't know how long those criminals will need to look for their money, but...
It sort of sounded to me like they were also kind of settling in there a little bit, perhaps, too. Maybe if they're elderly criminals and they seem to be quite happy that they were going to have their leisure to look for the loot. And, maybe this will be a little bit of a place to hide out for a while, too.
At one point, when Ted was trying to scoff at the apparitions, he said, well, maybe it's just that it's Halloween. So I'm not sure if he meant that the ghosts were only out for one night or that someone was playing a prank. The role of Joe Perkins is now being played by Mark Arnold.
Yeah, so that was
a bit of a shocker.
Yeah, it was. I had been, because you had been asking these questions for the last couple of weeks about who the next cast member would be in that, I was expecting either someone would just stop showing up, and I had guessed Veronica would not come back from her vacation, or that someone would be replaced, that the actor would go on to do other things, and that turned out to be the case here. I have to admit I did not think it would be Joe Perkins at this point. I thought that if and when Dane Witherspoon moved on from the role, that it would maybe be at the end of a storyline or at a plot point where it kind of made sense for the character to transition. This was right in the middle of things.
I think I had read in Soap Opera Digest already by this point that Dane Witherspoon and Robin Wright were dating, so I think it comes as quite a shocker because from what I understand it was the producer's idea, and they just said that he wasn't playing Joe Perkins the way they envisioned it in their heads. And, there's one thing to be said about the writer's vision, but when you have someone who brings a somewhat unique performance to a role and is still popular and has great chemistry with the leading lady, I think, why mess with that?
All I can think is, and I haven't seen any of this series at all, so I don't know what's in store for us, but I imagine the writers do plot stuff out fairly far in advance. And all I can think is that they were maybe thinking of future storylines that they were going to need the character in, and they just perhaps didn't see the original actor as being able to fulfill those storylines quite the way they were envisioning. But again, it is, even at that, it is a strange place to make that transition. I think doing it, if they really needed to do it, it would have made more sense to do it at a point where, as I say, the character was transitioning. Maybe, even if you think about what we've seen so far, to do it at the point where he originally went missing, when we thought he had been killed, or drowned, I guess, when he was trying to escape from Mason. That to me would have been a good place to change the actor.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little information about these early days, but it makes one wonder when they made the decision to recast, and if they were just waiting to find the right guy before dumping Joe, and they just did it as soon as they found Mark Arnold and were happy with him. So. And
you also don't know what kind of was going on behind the scenes. There might have been personal issues or whatever as well that we don't know about. And that was, of course, an age where there wasn't an internet and there wasn't social media.
There weren't people on the set as extras who would then go post the next day stuff that they found out,
Yeah, so we don't know, what personal issues or whatever may have played a role in this as well. Whereas, nowadays, you often know right away if an actor was late on the set or something like that, or if there was, some sort of recurrent behavior that was becoming problematic or something. You hear all of that. But 1984 was a long time ago, and they just didn't have those channels back then.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if there are any things in the future of Joe Perkins that we don't think Dane Witherspoon could have handled, I guess. And it was interesting, I don't know if it was a coincidence, to recast Joe while he's in disguise.
Yes.
So we still haven't seen Mark Arnold's real face. We've
No.
only seen him in the old man disguise.
Yeah.
So Joe and Dominic were watching the police around the warehouse, so I'm not sure how they found out about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
They must have followed some police cars. I guess if 1,000 police cars are racing down the road and they're looking for a kidnapped girl, it's a good bet that's where they're headed.
I actually have wondered in the past, just because Dominic seems to be so on top of things, if Dominic has some sort of a police receiver or something, if they're listening into the police radio.
Well, they're hiding behind dumpsters, both in their disguises, and there's lots of shooting going on at various times. And Joe just wants to run in and try and find Kelly in the warehouse himself. But Dominic says the only thing you're going to do is get yourself arrested, basically. So Dominic several times manages to stop Joe from running in. Now, inside, Antonio says to Ginger that if she leaves the money now, then he can pay her once he gets his hands on Cece's money. So Ginger, I guess, decides to go with that option, because she and her two thugs get in the car and they burst through one of the barricades and manage to get away. So I assume there's a high pursuit chase too. Some of the police, none of the ones we saw, moved their cars. They were still parked in the same spot, because no one knew what was happening in the building. But I imagine some patrol cars went chasing after the one that escaped. And then suddenly Peter comes out carrying an unconscious Kelly.
Yeah.
And then Joe is a bit concerned when an ambulance shows up and she still hasn't moved. But she comes to and she says, "Oh, Peter, you were so brave in there." So this is, a bit worrying to someone who wants Joe and Kelly forever.
Ships Joe and Kelly, yeah.
Although faux Perkins is probably not as good as Joe Perkins. So anyway, Kelly comes to and they take her to the hospital, and then Joe figures he's going to sneak into the hospital. Dominic just wants to phone to find out her condition, but he said, "I got to see her." So, Ted comes to be his visitor, and the media come there to talk to Peter. Peter, they say, "Oh, how did you get the gun?" Now, this may have been a police officer asking him at one point. There were 2 interviews. And he said, "Oh, I swung the briefcase and got one of them to drop the gun. And then I just sort of started firing randomly in their direction. As I ran towards the car, I suspected Kelly was in that car. And then I got her out. And that's what happened." So Mason's not really buying it.
Yeah.
But he keeps asking questions, and Joe keeps having answers for them that, he can't disprove. So... And then, because of Mason's questions, Peter decides to sort of throw him under the bus a little bit with the media, because he ends his interview with, "And the assistant district attorney has assured me that they'll be catching the kidnappers very soon." So he kind of leaves that in Mason's hands if something goes wrong now.
Yeah, exactly. So. It's a little personal challenge, because, of course, he doesn't really want Mason to find the kidnappers. But, a little dig at Mason.
So Joe gets to the hospital. He's in his old man disguise. Now, I remember Dominic said, "Whatever you do, don't drop your disguise, even for a microsecond." So the fact that he's carrying his cane at several points instead of using it to walk, he's already messed up, before he even gets in there. But then Kelly gets wheeled past him at one point to an elevator, and he whirls around and then bumps into someone, and his hat and wig come off at the same time.
Yeah.
And Peter sees this happen, and at first doesn't comprehend what he's witnessed, but because Joe's still stumbling around and not using his cane and getting his disguise back on.
Yeah.
Peter's observing him, and then Joe goes into the stairwell.
Peter's
and
watching him very carefully.
Peter, he knows something weird is happening.
Yeah.
It's not until Joe gets into the stairwell, or maybe he really gets a good sense of his height and his build and something clicks, and he goes, "Oh my God, Joe Perkins is alive."
Yeah, so Joe basically did the one thing he wasn't supposed to do, and all through this episode, Dominic is warning him and trying to keep him from doing stupid things, and and she succeeds for the most part until this one last scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now Peter knows Joe is alive.
Mm-hmm.
How will he use this information?
Yeah.
Will he just tell Mason I saw Joe, or can he figure out a way to parlay this into a bigger thing? Or can he get the money from Kelly that he needs for Ginger by promising to keep her secret? Or is he still interested
Does
in
he
Kelly?
still view Ginger as a threat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, she came back once already after he thought she was gone. So.
And it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens in regards to Kelly, because one thing we've come to know about Kelly is that she's a person of great passion who tends to ricochet back and forth. The passions go one way, and then she gets convinced of something else, and they go all out the other way, and so on. And so she seems to be Team Peter right now.
Yeah,
She
praised him several more times in the
Yeah.
hospital, and when Ted came to visit, she was, "Oh, Peter was so great." And
Yeah.
rescued me. So, of course, she'll find out it's fake at some point, I imagine. But.
And also, the other ramification of that is if she starts to get more interested in Peter again, what does that do for her energies and motivations on the Joe Perkins investigation front?
Mm-hmm.
She's been very she's been very motivated and very driven to find out who killed Channing and to prove Joe's innocence. And I think she would still be interested in that. But at the same time, if her feelings are kind of ebbing away from Joe a little towards Peter, I wonder if she would have the same energy in pursuing that.
I think it's another one of those little red herrings, and that she's not romantically interested in him at all. But
Okay.
there's something, a bit of a reversal there now.
Yeah.
Because something needs to keep Peter on the show, right?
Yes,
And
that's right.
if everyone wants him off the show, including the Capwells, well, then he's going to be cut off. But if Joe was the only one who says, "Oh, we need to get rid of Peter," and Kelly is still standing up for him with Cece saying, "Oh, no, let him keep this job, let him stay in our circle," then sort of Kelly's really the only thing that could sever his tie to the Capwells, and then conversely, she's keeping him in their orbit, which is what he needs to be on the show until they find something else for him. If this storyline, if the Kelly-Peter story ends.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see in a way that as far as Kelly knows anyway, she doesn't know about Peter's involvement with Ginger.
Mm-hmm.
He has been the one who has stepped up, risked his life to rescue her. Well, Joe was off hiding somewhere. Mm-hmm. So, and while it's obviously very understandable why Joe can't reveal himself, at the same time it is very clear to her that Peter's the one who has stepped up. So, yeah. So it does make sense.
Mm-hmm. I think, other than the fact that he's embezzled some money from the Capwells, he's really not in danger of anything else. So if he can somehow find that money and get it back to Mason, then I think Mason's kind of stuck with him. Because if Kelly is pulling for him, he wouldn't even be fired from the hotel, right?
Yeah, and, keep in mind as well that although Peter's the one who supplied the cocaine that they framed Joe with, it was also at Mason's instigation. So they've kind of got something on each other, really.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that as dangerous as it would be for Peter if it was proven that he was framing someone with cocaine, it's also not a good look for someone in the district attorney's office to be instigating
exactly. I mean,
that.
he would be fired immediately.
Yeah, and he certainly would not become the district attorney or have much of a shot at becoming governor if he does decide to take that route.
I guess the only other risk is Ginger coming back and telling Kelly everything, but I mean, I suspect she would take the money and run if Peter came up with it.
Yeah, I suspect
because
so,
she's
too.
probably thinking, oh, there's a golden goose that could come back in a couple of years and
Yeah,
see how he's doing with the capital money and maybe get some more from him.
yeah. Plus, we don't know what has really happened to them now that they've gone, Ginger and her two thugs. I mean, maybe in their haste they've accidentally driven off a cliff or something. We have no idea where they are right now.
But I guess we'll find out when we watch episode 69 of
69.
Santa Barbara.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So until then,
Happy Halloween!
In Kelly and Joe Forever Fan Club news, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is Dr. Tony has joined the club. Bad news, I have been kicked out of the club because I had my tattoos removed. After getting our tattoos of Kelly and Joe Perkins was recast with Mark Arnold. To paraphrase my friend Dorit when we arrived at Tatopani, "This they call Joe Perkins?" Unfortunately, due to the physics of traveling between dimensions, when I arrived on the Santa Barbara Earth for a fan club meeting, my tattoo changed from Dane Witherspoon to Mark Arnold. Sally, Tony, and the Warden, being from that Earth, did not understand my disappointment, as they only see Joe Perkins. This has been the final update for the Kelly plus Joe Forever Fan Club.
Welcome back!
Hello!
We've just watched episode 69 of Santa Barbara, originally aired November 1st, 1984. So we've started November. I don't know how warm it is in Santa Barbara in November. As you'll notice, I had all my tattoos removed.
Yeah.
Because now that there's not a real Joe Perkins anymore. Warren and Summer have a beer and an ice cream at the State Street restaurant. And they talk about things unrelated to gold coins for once. They get to know each other. Wonder what might have happened if they'd been stuck in that elevator for 3-4 more hours. And when they get home at 8 a.m., apparently they've been to some sort of carnival because Warren is carrying some balloons and a giant stuffed Ewok. Didn't we see that Ewok a few episodes ago?
Well, it's 1984, so I imagine Ewok toys were still popular at that point.
Is it?
You may have
Is
seen
that
it before.
Is that the toy Brandon dropped, or was that a teddy bear?
I thought he had a teddy bear, but I could be wrong.
Okay. I thought I saw an Ewok.
But we may
a
have
few
seen an
episodes
Ewok
ago.
before, yeah. And it was actually, I thought Warren and Summer were, they were making cute through most of this. It was a little awkward. There were weird moments, like Summer demanding vanilla ice cream over and over while they were in a bar. But anyway,
I think she got it eventually, though.
Yeah,
They left.
It's I just don't know if I would pay for ice cream in a bar when there's maybe better ice cream to be had in other places, but it doesn't. Anyway, doesn't matter. They seem to have a nice evening, and they came to an understanding at the end, and it looks like they're going to continue on with their relationship. So yeah, it's all good.
That's good. Santana and Gina have a fun day in Nice.
Yes, I think Gina feels like she's made a really nice friend, and I don't think she has any idea at all about Santana's own motives behind the entire visit.
Gina talks about Stockman a bit. And, he was always kind of jealous, so
Yeah.
she couldn't go out much. And she asked Santana if she really is through with Cece, and she says she thinks she is.
But then then she seems to hesitate a little, it seemed to me. That maybe she was...
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, she said she was in love with him, so...
Yeah.
But we'll see how things with Brandon shake out first, I guess.
Yeah.
She ends up reading a story to Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mason phones to see how things are going. You can tell by her expression she doesn't really want to talk to him, but he wants to know how Nice is, how Gina is, whether she got the job yet, which was the fake reason she gave for wanting to see Gina. Anyway, the conversation wasn't sufficient for Mason, so he promptly books himself a ticket to Nice.
Yeah, and so obviously, you know, Santana and Mason had a little moment of understanding, probably a week or so ago. And they seem to be having a slight bit more warmth in their relationship, which is, I think was genuine. But I think Santana used it to get some information and to get herself to where Gina was. And I think we're back to sort of the status quo between Santana and Mason now. That Santana's kind of rolling her eyes whenever it's Mason on the phone or at the door. Mm-hmm. And Mason is still thinking he has a good chance with Santana.
Now, he'd mentioned to Cece that he was interested in Gina. I don't know if that was just a part of his trick to get her whereabouts, but I wonder if he'll use Gina to make Santana jealous or Santana to make Gina jealous when he gets to Nice. We'll see if he tries to pull something like that.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I suspect that Santana won't be thrilled to see him.
No, I wouldn't think so.
And it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out, because he may, as you say, start using Gina to try to get to Santana, you know, or other means to try to you know, boost her interest in him. Or, you know, in this world he could find himself more attracted to Gina because she might end up being a little more amenable to him than Santana is.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
They're all around the same age, so it's,
yeah, exactly.
Quite reasonable.
It's not out of, you know, I don't think although Gina's an old family friend, I don't get the sense that he has a really close relationship with Gina or necessarily knows her that well. He might find himself very attracted to her when he's in Nice with her and Santana's not really talking to him very much.
Mm-hmm. Could happen. Now, back at the hospital, a lot of little things happened as people spent their time moving in and out of Kelly's room back to the nurse's station. But Cruz congratulates and apologizes to Peter for saving Kelly and for misjudging him based on his past with Ginger. Mm-hmm. Then Eden thanks Peter. Then Joe manages to visit Kelly dressed as an old man. Then Eden runs into him, and Kelly says, "Oh, must be an admirer." Mm-hmm. Then Eden invites Kelly home for dinner. Says Rosa will prepare something special. And of course, she doesn't know Kelly wants to rush home to Joe, but Kelly just says, "No, I don't live there anymore. I just want to go home." So she really pretty much has that line for everyone who wants her time today. "No, I just want to go home." So Mason tells Eden that Dad and Santana are not together anymore. Kelly gives her statement to Mason and the police officer that Cece fired the other day. Mason mentions that he thinks Ginger is behind it, and Kelly's shocked by that. She says, no, Ginger was there when I was attacked, you know. But Kelly does remember smelling perfume at the kidnapping site. Mason quickly pounces on that and says, "Peter, did you smell perfume? Did you see a woman?" And he says, "No, it was too dark. I didn't see her. I don't know if there was a woman I didn't see." So, and then suddenly it twigs that that night in the Capwell Hotel, Kelly was with Joe. He suddenly clicks in his brain.
Flashbacks.
So I think he realizes it's over with Kelly then, based on that. Peter spends, several times during the day searching for Joe in the hospital, but Joe always seems to vanish into either the elevator or the stairwell, just just as Peter's
we
about
see
to
just the
catch
back
him.
of him. Yeah.
Eden tells Peter that Kelly will come back to him. Now, Peter's, of course, the only one in town, other than Kelly and Joe, who knows that's not going to happen.
No.
And then Cruz shows up and thinks she was flirting with Peter, and she says, I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe she was. Maybe Eden and Peter is a possible thing for the future.
So, I don't know. And then, did anything else happen at the hospital?
Oh, yeah, let's see. Kelly tells Peter she doesn't want to ride home from him. I think he pretty much knew that would happen. But then he quickly goes to Sally's apartment and waits and sees Joe open the door to Kelly, confirming his suspicions. Joe's hair's a lot taller than it used to be.
Yeah.
Then in bed, Joe and Kelly talk about their future, says he wants to grow old with her, and then he tells her all about Peter and his life with Ginger. So now Kelly knows the full secret of Peter, because she had started going on about how, maybe we misjudged him and all that, so he kind of had to set her straight on that. So, Cruz tells Eden that Cece ordered him to drive her home. Don't know if that's true, but he manages to spend some time in the car with her. And they recall how they met.
Mm-hmm. A little flashback.
Yep, and he was undercover in disguise as Pepe the stable boy. Pepe the gardener, but then he was brushing a horse, so I'm not sure about that.
Mustache and a bandana.
Mustache, Spanish
and
accent.
Accent, yeah.
And some hilarious anecdotes about how horses are better than women. So she had said, I thought it was suspicious that a stable boy would work on a Saturday. Or a gardener, I guess. Then he says, well, that's not the first time you saw me. I could see you looking at me from your window when I was working. And then he says, and then I would spy on you when you would leave your shades purposely half open when you were undressing at night.
Yeah.
So Eden's doing that thing where she pretends that she doesn't know what the guy's talking about. She's done that with Lionel too.
Yeah.
And then basically they talk about the fact that they had a really hot summer together. And it seems like Eden wants him to try and reinitiate something, but he's not playing into that. So he kind of leans over her and opens the door from the inside so she can get out. And, she ends up staying in the car a little longer to try and just taunt him a little bit.
Yeah, I thought Eden was in kind of an odd mood in this episode. She really let into Kelly for not coming home for a reunion with the family, and got quite harsh with her. And so I don't know quite what that is about. It does seem that the Capwells are very perturbed by the idea of Kelly living on her own. Mm-hmm. Much more so than they would be with anyone else. I mean, even Ted got to go and live in L.A. on his own, basically, for a couple months. So, or at least without parental supervision. So I'm not quite sure, why Kelly living on her own in an apartment. I mean, she's certainly old enough why that would be an issue, but that came up again with this. Eden seems to be very Team Peter right now, and was very, very strongly in favor of Kelly getting back together with Peter. And she was sitting there very sympathetic with Peter, and that's when Cruz came in and thought they were flirting. And I think it is possible that Eden was flirting with him as well. Mind you, she seems to, flirt with a lot of people. When we first saw her, she was busy making love to a random pilot. So that doesn't seem unusual for her.
Had a bit of a back and forth with Warren when she landed.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, I thought her conversation with Mason, where she was concerned about Santana still being in Cece's life, and Mason was really unequivocal. He said no, she's not in his life, and that's what made me think, when Santana was talking about CC to Gina and was sort of had some regrets about how the relationship ended, I thought, oh, well, that would be perfect if she did actually decide to get back with CC after this conversation between Mason and Eden. That would really set off Eden's suspicions even more. So that would be kind of an interesting evolution of events if that does happen.
Yep. Ginger phones Peter at the office where he's having a drink to console himself. He just laughs at all of her ideas.
Yeah, he's
and
kind
so
of
she ends up coming over to talk to him in person. She's saying, oh, this is perfect. You rescued Kelly, or you're a hero, and she'll be back engaged again in no time. And then he says, well, Joe Perkins is alive. And he's told her all of those things that you let slip that night with Joe Perkins.
It's your fault, Ginger.
So Ginger is shocked by this. And then Kelly walks in and sees Ginger and Peter together. Right after Mason told her he thinks
completely confirms
Ginger
everything
and Peter
Joe's told
were in on it together. Joe was the one who said, I think Peter was in on it.
Yeah.
Peter's the one who said we think Ginger, or Mason's the one who said we think Ginger was behind it. So, and she's got this look on her face basically the whole time she's there talking to Peter. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe this guy. And, of course, when she leaves, he says to Ginger, see, Joe told her all about our past. That's why she was looking at me like that. Because, I used to work for you.
It's basically the same look of disdain that Robin Wright has on her face during her whole run of House of Cards.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
That is the look. So then suddenly Peter gets an idea. He says, I wonder if you could kill a man who's already presumed dead.
Yeah, that's his big idea.
And Ginger said, well, who would be doing the killing? So I don't think Peter really answers that.
No.
I'm wondering if we might have a new category for Kelly Capwell's Psycho Gazebo so soon after putting Ginger in the gazebo.
Yeah. So I guess just a couple of notes that I had on that. And I don't know if you have anything to say about the new Joe Perkins, but anyway, on that final note, when Peter said that, I actually wasn't expecting him to say that, although it does make sense now that might be where he would go. But it does occur to me, especially after his conversation with Eden, that there is another potentially available Capwell sister who might be interested in him.
And I thought that's what he was going to say.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to say,
yeah.
Maybe I should try for Eden.
Yeah, because she would be inheriting a bunch of money too, right? Mm-hmm. She's older than Kelly. I mean, she might even be better placed. So I think if this little murder plan of Peter's fizzles out, that might be another direction he can look towards.
Ginger might talk him out of it.
Yeah.
In the first scene of the next episode.
Yeah.
And, I really have no memory of anything that happens between now and May, basically, except I think I remember some scuba diving scenes, and that's about it. So,
yeah.
This will be all new to me for about the next 7 months. So.
Yeah.
And that's about it. That a lot of people are just having little one-line scenes in that hospital room, but that's what we have for this episode.
I actually really liked the way, now, what is the actor's name who plays the new Joe Perkins?
Mark Arnold?
Yeah, I liked the way in the first scene we really saw him in was when Kelly was in her hospital bed, and he comes scooting in his old man outfit and sort of says, hey, I'm here, And one thing I really loved about the way he did that scene was he completely acts like Dane Witherspoon. In that scene, he even has his little bit of a Texas accent.
Yeah, which I don't think he
and
did
his
yesterday, but there's a bit of a Texas accent came in today.
And some of the mannerisms. And so he kind of does, that kind of made a bit of a transition. And then later in the episode, when we saw him as himself, he wasn't in his costume anymore. This is when Kelly came home from the hospital, and he's there waiting for her. And this is the scene that Peter sees when he's kind of hiding around the corner in front of Kelly's apartment. And we see the new Joe and Kelly together, and then when we see them talk later in bed, I noticed that the actor kind of slips away from that and makes the character more his own, I would say. So he's not kind of riffing on Dane Witherspoon's interpretation after that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I actually liked him in the role. I thought he did quite well with it. So I don't quite have the grudge against him that you do.
Big mistake, NBC.
I actually think his acting's a little better.
Does that explain his 312 IMDb credits to Dane Witherspoon's 6?
Maybe.
It's not about the acting, probably. That's it for this episode, but we'll be back after we've watched episode 70 of Santa Barbara.
See ya.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've just watched episode 70 of Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Originally aired November 2nd, 1984. Joe and Dominic are going over their evidence, and they decide that Lionel and Sophia were having an affair.
Yes.
Because Joe had neglected to tell Dominic about the photo he found with a young girl and Lionel's initials on the back.
LL.
So they quickly put that all together, and they decide Channing had the evidence of the affair, and Warren stole it to protect his dad.
Yes.
They can't figure out how that ties into the murder.
No.
Then Dominic says she has a plan for Lionel tonight that doesn't involve Joe. So they've finally put evidence together. I mean, with all the stuff Dominic was doing in the background, I just assumed Dominic had all that evidence at one point, but I guess Joe had grabbed it.
Yeah, I was surprised to either be reminded or to learn that Dominic hadn't seen that postcard.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Dominic reiterates all those things belong to Sophia.
which we had already figured.
Mm-hmm. Lionel tricks Eden into coming to the jet by sending a fake note from her mechanic. Eden gets into the plane anyway, and says, "Oh, I told you I didn't want to meet you anymore." And he said, "Well, you keep coming to these things, so I assume you don't mean it.
Yeah.
Let's fly around the world." So she takes him up in the jet and does some rolls and threatens to crash the plane into the ground if he doesn't tell her all about this ship's log that he claimed to have found, blaming the Capwells for the Amanda Lockridge wreck. Then he takes the controls and tries to make her just as queasy as he was.
Yeah.
So later we see him lying on Augusta's bed, very, very queasy. Augusta wants to make love, but he says he needs a couple of hours to recover. But she says she's going out. She's going to that Peel exhibit, and he takes another opportunity to slag off Peel as a hack painter, and that all his reviews are paid for. They find an old-fashioned swim mask, which Augusta assumes Warren put there.
Yeah.
Then later, when Augusta leaves, Lionel wakes up from a nap. No, he wakes up from he's
drunken
drinking
stupor,
and he finds a bloody swimsuit. And then he has a flashback to Sophia, played by Marcy Walker again, wearing that same swim mask and swimsuit back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So this makes me think now Lionel's implicated in 2 murders.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things here. First of all, I just thought it was really interesting and kind of fun that, now we're seeing a flip between Augusta and Lionel. Remember when Lionel first came back?
Mm-hmm.
He would be chasing Augusta around the room and giving her love potions to try to get her to sleep with him. And now that it's, a month or two on, he's kind of doing other things, pursuing Eden and looking for a shipwreck, and now Augusta's trying to get him to sleep with her, and he's too tired or too busy or whatever. So that's just, I guess their relationship kind of goes through these cycles.
Mm-hmm. They have some great dialogue, though. As they usually do.
Yeah, they're always fun. And, of course, the other thing is just, I'm assuming that the dive mask and the bloody bathing suit are part of Dominique's plan.
Yes,
what
I
I'm
assume.
thinking.
I assume the dripping sound that he
Yeah.
heard that led him to the mask earlier in the episode, and I don't know, maybe she drugged his liquor even as part of it. So I think.
So that implicates Sophia as Dominic, I would think, because who else would have the mask and the swimsuit? Or would know
All
about it.
signs seem to be pointing that way.
Yes, but we'll see. There still could be a twist. We're still looking for Mason's mom, so again, that's another potential candidate.
Mm-hmm. Pete, Mason's detective, says that he couldn't find Pamela anywhere, and then when Mason reviews the list of places he'd searched, it was all 4-star hotels. He goes, no, I want you to go check all the hotels and the motels and the dives.
Yeah, so that indicates that Mason's mom is not necessarily expecting, he doesn't expect her to be keeping, a high society life necessarily. And we don't really know much about her or her history. Perhaps she has a history of mental illness or instability in her life that we don't know about yet.
So brings us back to the possibility that she's hiding in that motel that
that's another
that the
thought
kids
too.
bought.
Yeah.
Cece phones Gina just to say hi. Brandon lets it be known that Santana is there having a great time with them, which Cece, of course, flips out about. They have a very long conversation back and forth, basically reiterating everything. How could you do this to Brandon? I just want to see him. How long are you going to be able to just see him without telling Gina? Back and forth. And it ends with him saying, oh, well, we're never getting back together now.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is, another example of some things we've seen in the past, too, where one character's overreaction could also become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. That, from what we've seen with Santana and Gina and Brandon so far, she seems to be playing with him and having a nice visit. We know she has another agenda, but so far it's been very pleasant. And I'll be interested to see if CC's outrage at her being there and, the level of anger and upset he's feeling will actually push her to do the kinds of things he's worried that she will do but isn't doing right now.
Gina had mentioned that what she would want to do is have another baby so that Brandon can have a brother or sister, which kind of Santana didn't take to that at all, because that would really solidify them as a family more.
Yes,
so
that's right.
That may cause her to act if, it looks like Gina's going to marry someone, Mason or Cece, or someone that might put another barrier between her getting more access to Brandon or even custody if that's what she decides she wants.
And I am starting to wonder then what kind of ways could she act. I mean, one way would be, the more desperate way would be to somehow spirit Brandon away with her. Then
we wouldn't have either of them on the show, and it wouldn't be much of a story. So I somehow don't imagine that one happening.
Unless she was unsuccessful and you had a whole storyline about them pursuing her or something. Another might be legal action, but it seems to me going against C.C. Capwell and all the money he has and all the power would be very much of an uphill battle. There might be an attempt to claim that Gina's an unfit mother, but then would Brandon necessarily go to Santana? You know, it does seem, especially with the agreement that Santana, I assume, signed, the contract, that she is in a bit of a bind. Although the one thing I do wonder is how old she was when that contract would have been signed.
Well, CC was trying to get her to sign something recently, so I'm wondering if she ever did sign something.
Or if she did, if she was, a little bit young to really be considered responsible.
It also occurs to me that if CC has Gina's power of attorney, could he do something related to Brandon's custody without Gina knowing?
Yes, that's true. Could he be made an official guardian, for example?
Peter asks Ginger to get him a rifle. Semi-automatic.
Yeah.
2 boxes of bullets. He's going to kill Joe Perkins.
Yeah.
So he's teetered over the edge, too, now.
Yeah.
Also, he wants his $30,000 back so he can give it to Mason to stop the impending arrest. So, Ginger protests and tries to act big, but she realizes that she's kind of stuck because Peter could really point the finger at her. So, she says, I'll get your money and your rifle.
But, when someone like Ginger tells you you're going too far, you know that.
Yeah, she does try to talk him out of it a little bit, too.
Yeah. And she basically says what you just said, that he's going over the edge. He's going to a place that she doesn't think he should be going, which is a lot coming from Ginger.
Yeah, she's kind of sedate for much of the episode, kind of not her usual brash self, even though she tries a couple of times to get the upper hand. So Mason comes over. He's called Mason over at his convenience, and he hands him an envelope full of cash, and Mason says, oh, this is about $20,000 short. He goes, oh yeah, here's an IOU. And Mason says, well, I could have you in jail in 24 hours. He says, yeah, and I could expose you as the person responsible for the cocaine in Joe Perkins' motorcycle. While I'm at it, I'll tell the town about CC's underhanded ways of ordering Joe Perkins out of town.
We called it.
Yeah.
Didn't we? Yeah.
He flipped everything in the course of several days.
Yeah.
He was like at the bottom of the barrel trying to leave town, and now he's got the upper hand on several people. And before Mason walks out, he says, and I want a raise and a promotion.
Yeah. So, one of the things Peter points out, because, of course, Mason says, well, I can pin lots of stuff on you. And Peter says, well, I'm the hero. I'm the hero who saved Kelly Capwell.
This would be the perfect time for me to come clean with a confession about my past.
Can I just say how much I love the scenes between Mason and Peter? I always look forward to those because they're always so much fun, and they're always sparring, and both of them are quite ruthless characters and quite sneaky and underhanded, and I think for both of them, Peter definitely, but I think there's a bit of this in Mason as well. They're not necessarily who they portray themselves to be. And so that's what also makes these encounters very interesting.
Mason's good in scenes with everyone. When he's with Cece, there's always this animosity, but Cece has the power.
Yeah.
So then when he's in a situation with someone like Peter, where he has or had the power, he tries to flip that dynamic.
Yeah.
Peter discovers that Amy is Joe's sister. So I wonder if he's going to try and use that information to lure him, because he said, wish I had time to tell him before he died that I thought he was innocent.
Yeah, I think he's playing that one, and I think I don't know. I think just knowing that Amy is Joe's sister gives him a lot of possibilities for drawing Joe out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he has to draw Joe out in order to kill him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess he suspects there's a chance that Amy knows Joe's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ginger brings Peter a rifle that,
Yeah.
can be taken apart and fits into a briefcase. So
Mm-hmm.
he has all the pieces he needs to kill Joe Perkins.
Yeah.
Mason tells Eden that Peter is now vice president of real estate development.
Mm-hmm.
He had talked to Cece on Peter's behalf, and Cece gave him the job, and Eden said, I wanted that job. He says, yeah, well, I recommended him just because I knew you wanted that job.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of sibling rivalry, which we've seen before with Mason and Eden, and they have kind of an interesting relationship because sometimes they do seem to connect. I think in a way this is where they're a little bit alike in that they're both ambitious and they both have a streak of ruthlessness in them, and I think they both get each other on a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
And they understand that they're competing against each other, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, because it's probably Mason getting back at her for showing up and waltzing into the company in the first place.
Yeah.
So, then Mason flies to Nice.
Mm-hmm. And he's got a very pretty gift.
Yeah, for Santana, and his seatmate asks if that's for his wife. He says it could be.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's clearly thinking Santana's ready for marriage to a younger Capwell.
Well, we know that Santana, from the last episode, we know she wasn't thrilled to hear from Mason. She obviously doesn't have a deep preserve of fondness for him. It's certainly not the kind of feelings he has for her. But, I am wondering now that she's being blown off by CC if she might be tempted to play the Mason card again to get back in.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did speculate last time on whether there could be some connection between Mason and Gina as well. So that might be an interesting thing to see too.
I mean, it occurs to me if Mason could find a way to stick it to Cece, he would. So if he actually knew what the reason Santana has for all of her things, then Mason might think, well, if we get married and file for custody of Brandon, that would really piss off Cece.
Yeah, that would be one way to do it. And then he'd get Santana too, and she would be grateful to him, or at least she would be, sort of, she would kind of owe him something in a way. So that would be nice for Mason. Then again, if he hooked up with Gina, then he can control Cece's access to Brandon a little more. So that's a possibility. That's another route too.
Yeah, interesting to see.
Yeah.
This might be a triangle.
Yeah. So there's lots of possibilities there.
Now, I never did ask you after the Joe Perkins recast if you wanted to move your bet now to another character. Who was the last person you had it on? Summer?
Well,
or did you move it after
no,
that?
I had it on Summer, and that was just based on you not remembering who she was. And then I put it on Veronica because Veronica's been away, and so I thought if that character had basically fulfilled her role vis-a-vis Lionel Lockridge, that would be, if she found another job apparently and didn't come back from vacation, that would make a lot of sense.
Now, today Peter said Amy could stay on as the fake name Amy Prescott for a couple more days till Veronica gets back. So he's implying that she is expected back.
Yes.
So what is your new and current guess for the next cast member to leave the show?
I really don't know. I might move it back to summer, actually, because she's getting to know an awful lot about Warren's situation, and I think that puts her in a dangerous place.
All right, noted. For $5, you could win.
I don't know if I
Someday.
ever actually got my $5 for David Hasselhoff.
It's flying around here somewhere. It's in the prop box.
Yeah.
I'll get you that.
Yeah, so I'll move it back to summer because I think Warren, well, first of all, anytime a character like Warren falls in love, you sort of have to think that things might then fall apart. You know, characters aren't really meant to be happy for long periods of time in soap operas.
Well, that explains all my disappointment with
Yeah.
Kelly and Joe.
Well, I mean, Kelly and Joe are still happy. You're the only one who's
faux
not
Joe.
happy. But, so that's, you know, just my thinking, if it's from a character perspective, that, you know, she might be learning too much. And there is apparently, I mean, we haven't actually seen them, but there is apparently still a killer out there.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen any overt action against anyone yet by the killer.
Yeah. So that's why that's my guess. And the fact that you didn't remember her. Still don't really.
It's interesting how much she does look like Linda Gibney, who plays Gina.
Yeah. They did. They cast her well.
Well, we've come to the end of another week.
Mm-hmm.
And next week, we will be moving on to week 15, the first full week of November.
Mm-hmm.
And episode 71 is next. So we'll see you then.
See ya.
Do you like to listen to Lionel Richie? Evenings, I like to turn the lights off and the sound way up. And it's like soaking in a tub of Lionel Richie. So, would you like to take a music tub with me sometime? Tonight? Or whenever?